Hello and welcome to Happy You Ask, the podcast where we explore a little thing called happiness, one awkward conversation at a time. And I'm Erin Clare, your host. Today I am honored to be joined by Dr. Emiliana Simon-Thomas. She is the science director of the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley and is a neuroscience who studies compassion, gratitude, and awe. She co-teaches the science of happiness, which is one of the most popular online courses in the world with over 850,000 students. Oh, the grading. She co-edited the Oxford Handbook of Compassion Science and co-authored Daily Flourish, which is a practical journal designed to help readers build resilience and connection using science-backed exercises. She also runs the Big Joy Project, which is a global citizen science happiness experiment, and she has even presented on the science of happiness to the Dalai Lama. Psh, blows my mind.
Mhm.
Emiliana, welcome to Happy You Asked. I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, what a treat and what an opportunity. I'm delighted and look forward to our conversation.
Lovely. So I always ask everyone the same first question, which is complicated the more you know about happiness, what is your definition of happiness?
Oh, yeah, that is a wonderful question. I define happiness broadly. So it is not a momentary emotion. It's not pleasure. It's not immediate gratification. I define happiness as generally feeling good, like you belong and you matter, and
Mm.
that the future is promising. It's like a broad characteristic of how you walk the world.
I love that. That might be my favorite definition so far. I may say that every time though. Shh, I mean it right now.
It's okay. I'm happy to be in the club with anybody else whose definition of happiness has made sense and felt useful.
Yes. So you've taught the science of happiness to a lot of people. Has teaching it changed what happiness means to you personally?
Oh, good question. I mean, what teaching it does for me is force me to walk the talk. It's really easy to have a definition of happiness, to tell other people what it's important to do. As a lifelong learner myself, I am unconvinced by teachers who say something different than what they're doing. Teachers who I can't really read the material from their behavior or their mode of being from. And so I feel accountable in that way. I don't really think that it is changed fundamentally in terms of how I gauge it in my own life or in the lives of others, but I certainly continue to feel responsible for enacting all the things that I teach out in the world in my own community so that at least I can aspire. I can be on the same path that I'm suggesting is beneficial for others. And um, it, 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 it does work, right? When you intentionally decide, I'm gonna make time and space for experiences that I know from an evidence, source, a reliable and rigorously tested evidence source, actually leads to changes in people's mental experiences and their physiological systems. If you do it and stick to it in the way you might do and stick to an exercise for physical fitness, I find that it just makes a difference. It changes how you feel and improves your capacity to think of yourself as a happy person.
That's the hardest part, though. It's,
Yeah, yeah,
it's so
no,
hard. It's so
it
hard because we're
it
fighting our own brains the whole time.
the whole time. Well, I mean, to some extent, our brains give us the gift of certain pathways and certain sensitivities. For example, we feel the warm glow, right? We have this innate reaction when we have done something that uplifts another person or that makes another person smile or that brings joy or relief to another person. We feel a pleasure in our own heart, in our own sort of mental milieu. And so that's real. That's a biological affordance that makes it easier to actually arrive at happiness in that kind of more connected and belonging way. because we can use that. We can go and do generous things, even if we feel too busy, or even if it feels awkward or out of our comfort zone or habit. When we actually do it, we get a natural boost, a feeling that reinforces that behavior and makes it something more likely to kind of come up organically. So yeah, it's hard, but it's also there's also, parts of our system and our body that are meant for this. Some of the hardship, I think, comes from the culture, from the setting, from the situations that we find ourselves in, and the, fire hose of popular marketing engines that tell us what is going to make us happy that actually don't really make us happy. And so we have to kind of like always go, okay, that's not going to work. That's not going to work, even though we keep seeing it over and over again,
Mhm.
and do the thing that we learn about in a more rigorous way.
One of the things that fascinated me is you started your career studying fear,
Hmm.
which seems to be the opposite in many ways, but fear and aversion. And then you pivoted to compassion and awe. So what prompted that shift?
Yeah, well, it's not as exciting a story as I imagine I could make up, but basically it was like the natural next step given what I had done in my graduate work. The whole like path was a reaction in many ways to one of the most common ways that people think about humans, which is that emotions are somehow this like yoke that we bear, that emotions are the enemy of reason. That and I think there's this kind of mixed in flavor of kind of patriarchy and women being more emotional and thus less reasonable, or lots of like weird, very sort of subtle sociocultural, normative ways of thinking about how the world works really rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't believe that emotions were the enemy of reason. I felt like emotions had to be really important. We wouldn't have come into the world with them if they weren't directing us in functional and adaptive ways that helped us survive. And if there's ever like a problem, it's more likely a mismatch where the emotion kind of comes up in a setting or an environment that maybe it wasn't suited for, or evolution didn't anticipate. And so suddenly we're having to grapple with how that emotion isn't doing the right thing. Early on, I studied emotions in the kind of negative domain because, frankly, they're easier to elicit in a systematic way
Mm, mm,
amongst a lot of people. Like you can just play a really loud sound, or you can show a pretty universally unpleasant image, and that's easy. To get people to feel amused or to feel uplifted, there's a little bit more individual variability there. And so at the time that I was doing my graduate work, it was just a lot easier to put people in a booth, show them something upsetting, and then ask them to try to solve sort of demanding cognitive tasks. And I was trying to show like, hey, does this negative emotion make people perform more poorly? It turns out that it depends on what the task is. If the task is something spatial and a person needs to like remember where things were or how to navigate through a particular spatial context, they're better. Their performance improves. Why? Well, evolutionary, that makes sense, right? The lion's
mm.
chasing you, you're terrified. You need to have that like whole system for escape online and through geography, through space. So whoever said emotions were the enemy of reason wasn't thinking that
Ah,
actually emotions really help us escape death if we need to do that by running away. Emotions like fear and anger, not so good for deep interpersonal, proximal verbal tasks. Kind of makes sense, right? That's not where, when you're having a disagreement, you're having some kind of interpersonal conflict, you're not usually reading the fine print in that moment, right? So knowing that about what emotions are for, when they're most likely to serve what it is that we're trying to accomplish, felt important to me. As I was studying in this space, I would often present my work to neuroscientists, but also psychologists. And the neuroscientists were like, great, but why do you care about emotions? And the psychologists were like, great, but why, what about positive emotions? What about this whole other, arena? And so I was making my case that emotions matter to the neuroscience kind of colleagues. And then when I had the opportunity to sort of pivot uh, from grad school to my postdoctoral research, I thought, well, this is it. This is where I go and start looking at positive emotions. And in studying positive emotions, I very quickly observed from the literature and the body of research that there was this like slice of positive emotions that are about each other, right? Pro-social emotions, things that make us want to serve others, things that increase our willingness to invest our own resources in the welfare of others, that were uniquely um, sort of formative to lifelong well-being, to happiness in life. And so, yeah, I just got really interested in those things like compassion and awe and gratitude, humility, sort of love of humanity, these states where we really just want to be around each other and enjoy each other's company.
That's that's wonderful. So in studying compassion, then you do brain scans. For listeners who have never seen an fMRI, can you describe what you found?
Yeah, so well, an fMRI is basically like an MRI. So maybe listeners have, had a knee injury or some other kind of physical ailment where they've laid down and gone into this tube and it makes a bunch of noise and it takes a fancy picture. So an fMRI does the same thing, but rather than simply showing you anatomy, like where your brain is situated and which, sulci and gyri are bigger or smaller or denser or more highly interconnected, it actually captures the concentration of oxygenated blood in different
Mm,
regions. And what that tells you is that that particular area is most active because it's consuming the resources that your cells need to be functioning. So if I put someone into a scanner, I show them images that are evocative of compassion. So what kind of works well is, a kitten that looks wet and cold and unnurtured in the moment. Like it's pretty universal. Not a lot of people are brusque in the face of that kind of stimulus. And then we look like which areas of the brain go, whoop, what's happening and how do I feel? We also ask people in that moment, like, did you feel concerned? Did you feel kind of an urge to nurture? And what we found was that people who do report that experience, who do feel like they want to approach and care give, because the alternative is that you're like, ah, that freaks me out. I want to run away. And that's a whole different experience, which is also really important to document. But I'll focus on the compassion. What we found was that pathways that are uh, evolved for nurturance were more active. These systems that one kind of suppress your own empathic distress. So it's very natural for us to resonate with each other. And so if I saw you looking very sad, I would start to also mirror that sadness response, but it's really important that I don't mirror it to the degree that I myself feel like I've lost something irrevocably, right? It's very important for
mhm.
me to go, oh, I have this feeling in order to understand Erin's feeling, but that's it. And that understanding enables me to relate to her in the most productive way. Like I can now
Mhm.
oh, sadness, she's lost. How can I approach her in a way that maybe relieves some of that sadness, as opposed to how can I feel sad myself and then annoyed and upset with Erin for having made me sad, right? The that's not the best response. It happens. It's explainable, but it comes when we lack that ability to kind of distance our own history and identity from that feeling that we get when we encounter something that is like vulnerable and suffering. So, pathways that do that, the periaqueductal gray, it's often known in sort of medical literatures for coming online when people experience an injury but need to have like a shock response where they actually don't feel the pain, right? It suppresses this distress, this pain in that context so that the person can, advance their path towards safety. In this context, it's so that we can be nurturers. It's so that we can breathe out whatever urgency we might have felt that could have been personal, recognize that it's not our own threat, but it's about the other person. And then the second sort of system that comes online is the nurturance pathways. So deep in our brain, as mammals, we have the medial preoptic areas, like deeper in the brain, structures that make parents totally fulfilled by doing the, unbelievably inequitable job of staying up all night, cleaning up everything, giving all of their attention and love to a very vulnerable and incapable small creature, right? We do that. We would never do that for a roommate. Even our spouses were not that
No, to get
generous,
it together.
right? We expect so much, but these pathways, these systems that, are kind of often talked about in the context of oxytocin, right? The love hormone, they kind of reshift the kind of cost benefit analysis towards like diminishing the cost tremendously. Like it doesn't matter that I'm giving this much. I don't expect that kind of reciprocity with as a parent. And those pathways are important throughout life. They shape and inform our relational dynamics throughout life. And so when people are experiencing compassion, they're activating those pathways, they're activating sort of self-regulation pathways, and they're able to have this experience of I am here to kind of heroically nurture rather than, again, the alternatives, which are I'm going to run away because this makes me feel upset and worried about myself. Or tragically, through practice, people can, become apathetic. They can kind of really stoically suppress and stifle the emotional response to each other in ways that really become problematic in their interpersonal bonds and social relationships.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I was like, that sounds great, but I already know lots of people don't have those pathways working. So,
Yeah.
is compassion something we're born with? Is it a skill we develop? Is it a skill we lose? How does it
All
work?
three, all three. We're definitely born with it. Infants, come out with a readiness to mimic and simulate the emotions that they observe or perceive in, anything around them. They are sensitive to emotional sounds. So there's these, really clever studies that play infant crying to infants and just see like what do they do? Well, they cry too. Like it affects them physiologically to hear a sound, an expression of distress. So we're all born with this sensitivity to one another. Um, there's wonderful research on really young infants, toddlers, showing that there's also a preference for kindness, for generosity, for fairness. Again, clever studies from developmental labs that will bring infants in and then show them, a puppet show where puppets are different caricatures, and some of them are friendly and helpful and nice, and some of them are selfish and obnoxious and disruptive. And then afterwards, the researchers will like hold up the puppets and be like, well, which one do they reach for? Which one do they look at more? Which one do they kind of lean towards? And they always lean towards the nicer ones. That's who we want to be around. That's who we want relationship with. So we're born with it. We have an urge to do it. But like anything else, if we're not seeing it, if we're not having opportunities to express it and kind of behave in that manner, it will not be strengthened. So I don't think that people lose it per se without some kind of, you know, disorder or mental health condition or injury or disease. I do think that, when certain disruptions happen physiologically, you can fundamentally lose that capacity. As just quick aside, people who show that kind of loss are a clinical sample who experience injuries in the part of their brain right behind your eyeballs, the orbital frontal cortex. And what the orbital frontal cortex does is it synthesizes information from your emotional processing pathways and your higher order thinking pathways. So when you separate those, you see people who kind of lose that capacity to be sensitive to each other and to function in a kind of appropriately social way. So you can lose it, but I don't think the average healthy person does ever. I just think like anything else, if you get out of practice and it's not like part of what you're exposed to regularly, it will become less prevalent. It will just, other things will kind of be more prominent in your normal perception of the world. And one of my, I admire the work of a researcher named Daryl Cameron, who long ago wrote about something called compassion collapse, and still studies like how and when do people like fail to empathize or kind of turn away from opportunities to be compassionate. And usually it's through like a cognitive process. It's a decision. It's like I can't do anything about this, and so I'm just going to turn away. And
Mm.
sometimes that is what you have to do. It's kind of devastating as a species that that is the case because there it feels like in my vision of the world, there's always something you can do. It doesn't mean that you can solve the immediate problem. I can't fly to a place in the world where children have lost their homes as a result of some kind of international conflict and rebuild them a house. I know that I can't do that, but that shouldn't mean that I don't care that that's happening, right? I still need to like um, have that tenderness in my heart and concern to motivate any action that I can take. And like Aaron, sometimes the action is to look kindly and generously upon someone in your immediate community, right? To express that nurturance, that care, that concern in the context that you're in readily and abundantly. And, you know, hope in an optimistic way that by being generous in that way, you're leading to kind of this, you know, rising all boats change that we might not end up in a situation in the future where people are losing their houses because of, you know, international conflict. So, you know, you can't hold yourself to fixing everything. When people do, it can actually be harmful to the
That'd be stressful. I don't need
yeah.
that.
Well, and that's the thing is we don't like that. And so if you're like, oh, I have to fix everything, you know, again, following my news feed of all the horrible things happening in the world, it makes me feel inadequate and like I'm useless. I'm just gonna go lay down and forget about it. Or you know, have a drink or whatever people do to kind of suppress and ignore those feelings ends up, you know, kicking them in their own behind because really just holding on to that tenderness and expressing that nurturance in the places that are around you is a way that you can do something.
So is Daily Flourish then a sort of set of exercises to help develop that those pathways?
Yeah, so the Daily Flourish is it's 60 different journaling prompts that are kind of organized in a way to strengthen three main areas of ability. One of them is connection. So how can we really fuel trust within our communities, in our close relationships? With people who we, you know, encounter sort of more arbitrarily on a day-to-day basis, or maybe once and never again? How can we encounter people in a way that enhances the likelihood of shared values, of common humanity, of the discovery that there's some way that maybe our lives intersect that's productive and generative. When we don't have those chances and we kind of hold back and, you know, isolate ourselves, we've, you know, end up in this predicament that is quite known that so many people are lonely, right? And so connection, right? Skills, behaviors, exercises, activities that enable and strengthen your sense of connection. The second area is positivity. So positivity is, you know, your capacity to find humor and levity and joy in a moment for which it's called. Sadly, there are lots of us who walk the world and are kind of ruminating, you know, all the time about the things that happened that we're worried about in the past that might have gone, less well than we had hoped, whether people like us or don't like us, whether we did the wrong thing or the right thing. We're worried about what's happening later in the day or maybe even 10 years down the road. Like how's ever anything going to ever turn out the way that is good is like a really kind of refrain that people ruminate and percolate partly from a place of good. They feel like I need to know what's wrong. I need to really improve myself. But it actually ends up again kind of bouncing back in a harmful way if it prevents you from opening your heart, finding amusement, actually enjoying or dwelling in, inspiring or curious or awe-filled moment. Like we really do have to step back and notice the world around us instead of always getting stuck in this kind of ruminative, self-focused mind wandering that just becomes so habitual. So positivity is really about that. It's like taking the time to prioritize experiences that do give you that openness, that do really reliably give you feelings of joy and pleasure and connection and motivation and curiosity. And then the third big area is resilience. So resilience to stress is something that we all can benefit from. It's very easy to schedule ourselves to such a degree that we can never be successful. We never feel like we're making progress. We always feel like there's something that we need to worry about as we're trying to fall asleep in the nighttime, or even as we're trying to have meaningful conversations with our loved ones. Like we're in our heads, we're thinking about the things that make us feel stressed. So the third 20, so there's really 20 of each, 20, 40, 60. Third 20 prompts are really about things like self-compassion. So relating to your own setbacks and inadequacies and failures in the way that you might relate to a close friend who shared with you that they were going through a hard time, right? Close friends, we're generally pretty supportive of ourselves. We're generally pretty like exasperated by, like, how could I have done that? How could I have made that mistake? It's just outrageous. I must be a terrible person that I made that mistake. And I'm never going to amount to anything because I keep making this. I just will always make this terrible mistake. We do this kind of inner thing that's very self-critical, also kind of a weird, like normative social assumption that self-criticism is like a secret to, success and high achievers are really self-critical. Actually, when researchers study it, people who are self-compassionate are more successful at reaching their goals. They do it more quickly. So, that's an example of one of the resilience practices that we kind of encourage people to connect with in the Daily Flourish Journal.
And you talked about gratitude too as being a very important practice. And you have a three-part formula for that. Can you walk us
Yeah.
through that formula?
Yeah, so one of my favorite ways to teach gratitude, to encourage people to actually bring more gratitude into their life is to express it more. It's a lot of people are familiar with like a gratitude journal or a gratitude list or maybe a gratitude letter, and all those things are wonderful. Um, but they don't always have the same interpersonal power that an expression of gratitude has. People are pretty good at saying, hey, thanks or thank you. Um, and that is better than nothing. But a real effective and impactful expression of gratitude does three things that leverage the qualities of gratitude that make it feel good. Um, One, if I were to say thank you to you, Erin, I would say thank you for inviting me to be on your podcast, right? So I named what it is that you did. Second thing, I know you had a lot of different people you could have reached out to, and it means a lot that you took the time to find me and reach out to me. So I'm acknowledging the effort that you put in. And then third, I really feel fulfilled when I have an opportunity to bring the science from the greater good at UC Berkeley to a new audience, to a new group, and introduce them to all the resources that we have. So I've now described how it benefited me. So I've just done three things, right? What did
Oh, and
you
it
do?
felt good. That felt
Yeah.
good. It
Exactly.
worked.
So
Oh, thank you.
yeah, that's the only risk is you get in this back and forth. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you spiral. But no, I mean, I think if we can just hold that in your mind, gratitude 1, 2, 3 is how I remember it. Like, what did they do? What effort did they put in and how did it benefit you? When people express gratitude in that way, they feel more warmth and like uplift from their own experience of gratitude. And the person who's receiving the gratitude feels more appreciated, more validated, more seen. And using the kind of framework of Sarah Algo, which is she characterizes, she's a professor at University of North Carolina, she characterizes gratitude as the find, remind, and bind emotion. So it's an
Mm.
emotion that we've evolved with. Primates have gratitude also. It's part of our inborn innate capacity. It is there to help us find each other, remind each other of the relationship, the value, the importance, the depth, and help us establish a social bond. So yeah, those are the things that make gratitude feel stronger and do what it's meant to do.
Now, you're also running what might be the largest real-world happiness experiment in history with the Big Joy Project. So, what have you learned from that project so far?
Yeah, so the Big Joy Project is a brief online interactive program that anyone can join. And what it does is it asks you to answer some questions, and that's kind of the science part. It's also for people who participate because we give people individualized feedback, but it also helps us learn something. Once you finish your little, onboarding or joining survey, it'll send you a nudge every day for 7 days. And the nudge will be like, hey, try writing down 8 things that you're grateful for. And it asks you kind of how you're feeling. Do the little practice, or we call them micro acts because they're very brief. Tell us how you're feeling, reflect on it, and then you're done for the day. It'll send another nudge in the evening to say like, how you feeling right now? Because we're really curious, like, does doing one little thing that took less than 5 minutes change your mood up until the evening, or is it just only working for that short period of time? Um, After 7 days, you fill out another survey, and we use that data again to one, tell you as the person who joined the Big Joy Project a little bit about what you did because we know which buttons you pressed and what you said. And so we'll say, well, you did 5 out of the 7 things. Um, a little bit about how they impacted you. Like this one really made a difference for you. This is the one maybe that resonates with you because that's something we don't know too much about in the positive psychology space. We don't have a great personalization or precision around like, well, who are you? What are your individual characteristics and what's happening in your life? And how can we use that information to give you the activity or exercise or practice that is going to be the most beneficial? Like that's right now we've kind of got this giant library. Like just come here, look at all this stuff, pick something, see if it works. So the Big Joy Project was in part trying to help us understand what would work best for whom. Um, because it's not a randomized controlled trial, meaning we don't assign people to do the activities and then assign other people to do like sham or active control activities, we can't really make causal claims. We can't really say like, oh, we know that this 7 day experience causally increases well-being. But all of our data suggests that it does, right? So people who, we've got a number of different studies that we've published so far, and the sample size sort of depends on what analysis we ran. So people who last the whole 7 days is a smaller sample than people who join, and then we try to understand whether they stay for 2 days or 3 days or 7 days. But in studies of 40,000 people, or data from responses from 45,000 people, well-being goes up. People's, self-reported physical health goes up. People's sleep quality goes up. People's willingness to endorse a statement like, I'm willing to sacrifice my own quality of life to benefit the welfare of less people who are less privileged than me goes up. So people are more pro-social, they're doing better. They're more healthy in these ways that, maybe is a tough sell, right? One
Mhm.
week of doing something every day for, less than, 5 to 10 minutes is going to change your physical health. Um, People say so. Our next kind of phase of work will be to gather some of that causal data so that we can make stronger claims. Um, we also are learning like who it works best for. So remember that precision medicine question, like who, or precision well-being question, who benefits, who gains the most from doing something like that, like the exercises or the micro acts in the Big Joy Project. People who report experiencing more financial strain, who stay with the program for 7 days, gain more from it. Okay,
Oh,
so there's two questions. One, like who does it and who benefits from it? People who say that they're experiencing financial strain drop off more. They definitely do. Their lives make it harder to respond to this, device driven experience for 7 days. But the ones in that life stage or circumstance who do stay end up benefiting more than people who report lower financial strain. Same
that's
goes,
fascinating.
yeah, same goes for people from like less represented ethnic and cultural groups. So there's across most positive psychology research, sadly, there's not a great diverse representation of population sampling, right? It's mostly middle class, Caucasian, privileged people who are in the studies and who are running the studies. And so the nice thing about the Big Joy Project was that it's global. Our partners who kind of really spearheaded the whole thing were filmmakers. Um, Peggy Callahan and Jolene Smith. They made a documentary movie about the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu's friendship and their
Yeah, I
respective
saw it.
journeys. Yeah, so they were like, we want people to have something after they watch this movie, and want them to feel like they can kind of embody what they saw and channel their inspiration into something that really is life-changing. And they were the impetus for this.
It's amazing.
And
I love
so
that.
they had this global audience. And so that has enabled us to do this kind of work, studying different impact and engagement patterns as a function of individual characteristics. And, the work goes on. We're still,
That's that's fascinating, and that makes me happy just to hear that's happening. So thank you for it. It's wonderful. Now, your more recent work looks at forgiveness, right,
uh-huh.
through a brain science lens. And forgiveness is hard. That's a hard one. So why does forgiveness matter so much for our well-being?
Yeah, well, so forgiveness is really hard because it is the ultimate pit of kind of self-defense and generosity. Like we're regularly doing that. I've referred to it earlier as like cost-benefit analysis. Like how much does it cost me to do this? How much benefit am I going to get? I think at some level our nervous system is doing that without our awareness about every single choice we make, from the minutia of where our eyes saccade to, whether we invest in our retirement funds, right? It's all some kind of calculation. We often equate that cost benefit analysis to some kind of like bank account, which I think is a little bit problematic because it doesn't take into consideration the benefits of social connection, the benefits of belonging and community. Like those are more amorphous and not as they just don't have the same additive and subtractive quality of, are you putting money into your savings account, earning interest and taking it out? But that said, forgiveness, like it's ambiguous. We don't know if what we're offering when we forgive is going to relieve the distress that is associated with a previous harm. And we resist the possibility that somehow forgiving is also an endorsement of the experience, which it's not, right? It's not. Forgiveness does not mean that you're letting anyone off the hook or that you're saying what happened is okay. Um, And so it can also just be easier to kind of hold the grudge or avoid the issue. It can feel easier to the average person. And then there's a cultural element to it. There are places in the world where people forgive really easily and often, right? The US is unique alongside a number of other cultures and having a very individualistic kind of identity that is protective of our our sense of self. And so why would I ever advocate for forgiveness, knowing all of that? Because ultimately, unforgiving is more harmful than forgiving. It's more costly in the long run. It's a little bit like gratification of desire, right? You could like take this one thing, the way sometimes people study this is, would you like $10 right now or $100 in 6 days, right? It's really better to say, I'll take the $100 in 60 days, right? But there's something kind of tempting about the $10 right now, and that's a grudge right there. It's the $10 right now.
Mhm.
I'm gonna avoid sort of the deeper process of letting go, of deciding to let go, um, and go on with this basically kind of like um, trauma, enduring trauma of unforgiveness, right? When we hold a grudge, when we're unforgiving, we're basically holding on to the pain, the harm, the grief, and letting it reemerge spontaneously and unexpectedly whenever a reminder of that past event comes up. And it will, maybe from inside our mind, maybe from a smell or any other environmental stimulus. We'll be like, oh, I'm angry and afraid again.
Mhm.
And that's unpleasant. That's hard. That's like post-traumatic stress. Forgiveness, you let go of that. You
Mhm.
untangle yourself, your worth from that past experience of harm and are able to walk the world without having that unsolicited fear and harm reaction. But instead, you know, you move on and have your own, power in that and courage in the world. So it's hard.
You put the suitcase down. You stop picking it up. Just leave it
Yeah.
down there.
Yeah, I know. There's so many great metaphors for it. Like, unforgiveness is like drinking poison and thinking it's going to harm the other person, like putting the suitcase down, but then it's just fascinating that it's still really hard. It's still
Yeah, it
really
is.
hard for a lot of people. It feels just somehow righteous, or more convenient, or, I think for most, I really think the issue is that it's just scary. It's scary to forgive because there's something kind of, I don't know, memorable and defining about that part of your life, of your autobiography, even if it's bad. And I think that that can still stay there. That's the other part. Like, it doesn't mean that you forget. It doesn't mean that you
Yeah.
pretend it never happened. It just means that you release that repeated traumatic reaction to any reminder of that past harm. And the real advanced forgiveness involves compassion. Like the
Yeah.
real advance, like the first part I've been talking about so far, that kind of letting go, giving yourself that grace and courage to go through with your life without that fear. Second part is, can you like imagine like how hard it is for that person to be a harm doer in the world? Like what a tragedy. I wouldn't want to be a harm doer. I wouldn't want to be
Mm-mm.
a person who other people look at and think is a terrible person. And not that, I think it's heavy and hard. And I have compassion for people who are harm doers, not because I think they shouldn't be held accountable. They absolutely should, right? This isn't like in like doing away with justice. It's that, we can all be a little bit more compassionate towards each other in all areas of life, and that ultimately that will benefit us all.
It's a wonderful message, as hard as it is. I only have two more questions for you.
All right.
Um, what is the most surprising thing that you've learned about the science of happiness that it's taught you that you wish other people knew?
Ooh, that's a good one. I mean, I think what I think of immediately is recent research on like mitochondria and the microbiome, these cellular ways that our bodies benefit from greater happiness in life. I think people think of happiness as something you're born with and you're just lucky to have it or not. And it's also just like whatever, it is what it is, and you don't have much control over it, and it's just like a mental thing, right? But turns out that like your microbiome, what you eat and how your, gastrointestinal system works is impacted by your well-being, by your happiness. Your mitochondria, which are the engines of your cells, right? These little things that help your nucleus get and DNA get all the resources they need to perform the typical biological life-preserving functions, like they're sensitive to your happiness level. So realizing that, being a happy person isn't just like a whatever option that you can choose that doesn't really make a difference. It actually makes a huge difference in how long you live and how healthy you're going to be. And I think that that's fascinating. And you have a role in it, right? You can play a role in your own happiness in life. So that's one of the things that I hope most people understand. The last little piece of that is work by my friend Kostadin Kushlev, which was to test the idea that like happy people kind of navel gaze, right? Happy people just kind of sit around and eat bonbons and binge Netflix and disavow themselves of the challenges of the world. And his data showed that that's not the case, that actually happier people are less distressed by existential challenges, but more likely to do something about it. So you can ask
Mhm.
people like, how worried are you? How freaked out are you about, the possibility of, I don't know, fire season in California in October? And some people can be like, oh, I'm really worried. I'm going to get 18 filters and I'm going to do whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just going to pull my hair out. And other people would be like, yeah, it's real, but I'm not like stressed about it. And then you give them each a chance to do something. Like, are you going to cut the trees away from your house? Are you going to talk to your neighbors about having a safety plan? The happier people do that. They're more likely to go out and do that kind of stuff to address the situation that is potentially risky than the people who are less happy. So, there's so much to
You
be
know,
gained.
he was just on my podcast.
Oh, he was? Oh, so good. He probably explained it 10 times better than I did.
No, he didn't. He didn't. But I can't wait. I hope he listens to yours and be, oh, Nate, that's me.
Yeah. 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 Well, I'm
That's
so
wonderful.
lucky to have so many colleagues and amazing thinkers all around the world doing the work that I get to talk about. I mean, I'm one tiny, tiny, tiny piece of hay in the haystack. And yeah, I'm fortunate to have
But
so many smart
what's
people.
fascinating from my position talking to all of you is it's all different perspectives, right? Different disciplines coming together, studying something similar, and people come to like very, very similar conclusions
Hmm.
just through different pathways. And that gives me such hope.
Yeah. Yeah. Me
It's a
too.
great thing. Yeah.
Me also. And that, having multiple methods kind of distill down to a similar kind of idea is really affirming and validating and gives strength to everything that we say. So yeah, I'm grateful for
Yeah.
that.
And final question.
Yeah.
You get to add a song to the Happy US playlist. It can be any song you want. There's no criteria. It's just whatever you'd like to add.
What came to mind immediately is that Dido Thank You song.
Oh, I love that song. I
Yeah.
love that song.
Yeah. Maybe it's
Perfect.
called White Flag. I don't remember, but
No,
yeah,
it's thank I think it's thank you. Or maybe White
Yeah.
Flag. Yeah, I know what you're
Thank
talking
you.
about though. It's an
Yeah.
amazing song. Yeah.
Yeah,
I will
it's just
have
a
that.
beautiful song. It's really heartfelt and I like the best
Thank you
day
for
of my
giving me the
life.
best day of my life
Yeah, right? I
just by
mean,
existing.
Well, and any day can be the best day of your life because every day is different than the day before, and there's no limit. So, yeah, I think I do love that song, and I would add that to the playlist.
Perfect. I
Yeah,
cannot thank you enough for joining me and sharing your expertise and all that you've been doing. It is incredible. Thank you. Thank you for this work.
of course. Thank you, Erin, for being a voice to the community and bringing all of these insights to people in the world who will benefit from them. So, thank you. Thank you for inviting me
Thank
to
you.
participate.
And thank you everybody for listening. Until next time. Bye.
Take